Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So in this video we are back with the Fischer games. Today is a Fischer day and today I'm going to show you a really nice game. But before that, let me just tell you, today I'm starting with the Interzonal tournament in Portoroz from 1958, and this tournament is a very important tournament for Fischer. As I already said before, he qualified for it by winning the US Championship, and this tournament is actually in itself a qualifier for the Candidates tournament of 1959, and those Candidates tournament are actually a qualifier for being a challenger to the world champion. So having a qualifying tournament of qualifying tournament of qualifying tournament, maybe at one point Fischer could have just gone and challenged the champion for the title. But to actually see if that happened, you will have to stay tuned for a couple of more videos on this channel, or you can just Google it and see for yourself. But if you want to keep yourself excited and just live this story with me, just keep watching all the videos. That being said, let me just first jump into a couple of things before I cover the game. So, Interzonal tournament in Portoroz was actually kind of a different tournament from all the tournaments that Fischer has played up until now. He is still a 15-year-old boy trying to earn his fame and trying to be a very good chess player, but up until now he has only played tournaments in the United States, playing against players from the United States. And yeah, that in itself was a good thing, but essentially he is yet to make his European debut, which means playing with the Soviets, playing with the Yugoslavian chess players and all other good players from Europe actually. And the Interzonal tournament in Portoroz was actually a really good chance to show his skill with actually not the best players in the world at that moment, but a very good group of chess players. But okay, I mean a very good group. Let me just tell you some of the names that actually were on this tournament. So there were Mikhail Tal, you had Svetozar Gligoric, you had Tigran Petrosian, you had Paul Benko, you have Friedrich Olafsson, you have Rodolfo Tan Cardoso, you had David Bronstein. So yeah, quite a good bunch. So there weren't people like Smyslov and Botvinnik and some other Russian champions, but still a very nice tournament. And yeah, so Fischer knew that, and in order to win the tournament, or actually be in a position to actually qualify for the candidates, he had to be so in the first six. So in order to qualify, he needed to figure out a way how to actually get into the first six, and he had a very very interesting strategy, so to speak. So he knew he had to be in first six, and in order to do that, he said, okay, I have to win at least 6 games so I have to find 6 rabbits. He said it. And if I lose a game, then I need to find at least 1 other rabbit, but it doesn't matter because I will probably draw all the other games. So that was his approach to this tournament. It kind of sounds funny for a 15-year-old boy, even though so talented, and even though we already seen some great games from him. It kind of seems funny because he will be going against players such as the ones I already mentioned. But yeah, he knew that he actually needed to prepare. He took this kind of seriously, so he actually went to the USSR before going to this tournament. So in 1958 he was invited to come to the USSR, and there it was arranged for him to play against Boris Spassky, who was actually at that time the junior world champion. And Fischer, everything was arranged. He actually came to Moscow, I think. And yeah, it was like, okay, now it's time for you to play in order to have some matches, like exhibition matches, try it out, see how you feel, and maybe prepare some variations. But he said no. In the Fischer style, he said that he won't play against anybody but the world champion. And the world champion at that point was Mikhail Botvinnik. And the Soviets just find it ridiculously funny, and of course didn't want to approve such a request. And yeah, I just said, okay, Fischer, no way will we do that for you. Of course, you are free to do whatever you want, but now you failed all of your chances. And in a sense, Fischer was left there not wanting to play with Spassky and wanting to play only with Botvinnik. Yeah, and essentially that resulted in him not being anywhere at that point, because none of his terms were met. And okay, this thing will change throughout life, because as you know, Fischer was a very demanding person, and for every tournament where he was and for every match that he played, he usually had a list of crazy demands. And yeah, essentially if you didn't met him, he didn't want to play. But at that point he was still a 15-year-old boy. And yeah, he was from America. You have to understand Russian standpoint from that time, because depending on the history and the relationship between the US and the USSR at that point, yeah, of course they didn't want to give in for the demands of a 15-year-old American boy. And yeah, being such crazy demands to actually wanting to play only against a world champion. But okay, Fischer didn't stop at that. He actually went on and just played blitz in the local clubs. And he actually got quite good results, which essentially not really forced the Soviets to call on some big shots, some big players, but to actually notice him and try like to straighten him out, and actually not just punish him, but maybe to test him out a little bit, just so we see, okay, you're playing against good players, but let us see how are you playing against some very good players. So in order to see that, they actually invited David Bronstein and Tigran Petrosian, one of the best blitz players at that time. And actually Bronstein declined the invitation, saying, okay, why should I play against a child? I mean, why? Just why? I mean, I'm playing serious tournaments against serious players, and now this guy comes from America and you want me to play against him. So he definitely refused that. On the other hand, Petrosian was actually keen to know how Fischer plays, and in the end he actually won the overall match. There was no like result. They just blitzed out a couple of games. In the end, it was said that that Petrosian won with a 2-point lead, and they played a lot of games. So at that point, Petrosian was a really good chess player. So essentially, having that kind of a result against Petrosian at that time is in itself a very nice result. So good on Fischer there. And yeah, this is kind of that's kind of ended his first tour over USSR. Didn't have it in the best of memories for the future. There was also some kind of an incident there where it was said that actually Fischer called all of them like some Russian pigs, but later on it was like I don't know really. There is no proof of that actually happening like in and of itself. The thing is, maybe Fischer said something and somebody lost it in translation or something. But okay, it happened. Didn't quite portray Fischer in the best of the light at that point in time. But nevertheless, he went on, and then he moved on to Belgrade actually to try and play out a couple of exhibition matches there. There he played against the best, one of the best masters in the Yugoslavian chess, and yeah, essentially that was pretty much it for his preparation. And finally, the day comes where he starts to play this tournament. So for this tournament, I'm going to show you a couple of games. Spoiler alert: this is the best tournament Fischer has from this tournament, so this is why I wanted to incorporate this game with the story. But later on I will also show you some other games actually from this tournament, and now you will see Fischer in this bright light as this shiny new ambitious talented player, and in the next couple of games maybe you will see him in some other light, but I will also let you be the judge of that. And of course, that being said, let me finally show you the game. Okay, and here we have e4 c5, going for the Sicilian, knight to f3 and d6. Fischer is white, and here he is playing against Bent Larsen. We have d4, c takes on d4, knight takes on d4, knight to f6, knight to c3 and g6, going for the dragon variation of the Sicilian. It seems that I'm showing you the dragon very often last couple of videos. And here bishop to e3 was played, and sometimes an option is, it's not an option sometimes, it's always an option, but sometimes people play here knight to g4. I was in a situation where when I was playing one of the tournaments in my career, knight to g4 was played to me here in order to make me decide, will I play bishop to g5 or bishop to c1. If I play bishop to c1, knight to f6 goes back, and then you can play bishop to e3, kind of repeating the moves. But here, okay, they didn't go for that. Here bishop to g7 was played right away, and Fischer plays f3 to stop knight to g4. We have castles by black, queen to d2, knight to c6, and bishop to c4. So we are in the same situation as in yesterday's video. So yesterday I showed you a game where Karpov and Geek played, and here actually Geek went for something like queen to a5. He developed the bishop on d7, but Larsen decided to take on d4, which isn't the best of moves actually to play at this point, because after bishop takes on d4, now White has these two very strong central bishops, and he is just going for a better game. We have bishop to e6, but Larsen had this idea where he takes a totally different approach. Bishop to b3 doesn't want to exchange this bishop and open up the f file for black, because that kind of makes a problematic g4 push in the future, because this f3 pawn will stay a target of this rook. So here queen to a5 was played, and now queenside castle. And now there were some discussions over the next move that was played. Many people have been studying this bishop to b3 at this point. Of course, the problem is now you cannot take a takes on b3 because of queen to a1, and White wouldn't have such a good game, because after knight to b1, rook from f to c8 is a move. This king is stuck on the c1 square. So yeah, black would enjoy this game here. After knight to d7, he can also use the bishop in the attack, but here the better move is c takes on b3, and now the c file is open. But it seems that White is okay in this position, because black cannot make any progress against this structure. He can play king to b1, and after that rook to c1, and at the same time he still has these pawns which he can push in order to attack black. So he didn't took so after queenside castle, Larsen didn't took on b3, he played b5. And now we have king to b1, essentially stopping this threat, and now the a pawn can take on b3, but b4 is played. And now knight to d5. We have bishop to d5, not taking with the knight because of the exchange on g7, and now bishop takes on d5. This move is essentially an invitation for a draw, so to speak, because in order to keep your chances, you have to play pawn takes on d5. You don't want to give up the bishop pair. But Fischer, the player that he didn't want to block off his favorite light square bishop in the Sicilian. So here he took with the bishop, and now Larsen could have taken on d5, and after bishop takes on g7, he has this intermediate knight to c3. And now after all of these exchanges, not with the pawn, first with the queen and with the pawn. White is a pawn up, but after rook from f to c8, these pawns are doubled, and White cannot hope for more than a draw in this position. Black is maybe even better. So Larsen, both Fischer and Larsen wanted to play for a win in this game. So here, instead of taking here, Larsen played a rook from a to c8. But now bishop to b3 comes back. Now there is no chance of capturing the bishop, and yeah, Fischer, from this point on, he just went in for a win. And we have rook to c7. Larsen wants to double up the rooks, or maybe play the rook on b8, queen to b5, and push the a pawn, but it seems kind of slow, because Fischer starts right away with h4. Now we have queen to b5 preparing the a pawn push, and now h5. Like Karpov yesterday, Fischer is also sacrificing the pawn on the h file in order to open it up. But yesterday we had the capture of the h5 pawn, and here we have doubling up of the rooks. This allows Fischer to capture on g6, and now h captures on g6. But now it's the turn of the other pawn. g4 is pushed. And we have now a5, and now g5. So the knight is attacked. You cannot push a4 right away. We have knight to h5, and now rook captures on h5. Like yesterday, also Fischer sacrifices the rook on h5. So for those of you who don't play the Dragon Sicilian with white that often, and you don't know of this particular maneuvers and plans, these are the plans that you should usually think about in playing. And because, as I said yesterday, it is a race in this game, in this opening, and the point is you want to be the first one to come to the finish line. So the first one who actually attacks and the first one who starts making serious threats is going to be the one who actually wins the game. And here we see that already Fischer makes some serious threats, because after g takes on h5, which Larsen played, he plays g6, this pawn is pinned, and now Larsen is in big trouble. Still, he cannot push the pawn. Bishop can capture on f7. He needs to find some counterplay, and he plays so couple of options here: capturing on d4, playing e6, blocking off it, or playing e5. Larsen played e5, and now we have g captures on f7 with tempo, and now king to f8. Don't want to take right away. First move the king, and now bishop to e3. Now Fischer has this very good bishop pair, and he is threatening to capture on e7. Because of that, d5 is played, and now capture with the pawn. The threat is to push the pawn with tempo, and now a possibility. So this was actually maybe the last chance to actually push a4 in order to just take this closed bishop, but also a4 doesn't bring much hope for black here, and instead of pushing a4 here, Larsen took on f7, which I guess whatever Larsen would have played, in a sense, d6 would be played here. This is a passed pawn, and also you're opening up this light square bishop with the attack on the king. And here, the rook is attacked, so rook to f6 is played, but now bishop to g5. And yeah, using this bishop pair, Fischer is just in a great position here. Now, you can defend the rook, but definitely wouldn't advise it. Already this position is lost. Maybe sacrifice. If you sacrifice it, you will get checkmated. So here in this position, Larsen decided to put the queen back, bring her back to the defenses. He played queen to b7, but after that we have a quick bishop takes on f6, bishop takes on f6, and d7. Now the queen is cut off from this part of the board. Rook to d8, and after queen to d6 check, Larsen actually resigned the game. There was actually a better continuation here, queen to h6. If you block with the bishop, then you have a queen to d6 checkmate in one, because now the king cannot escape on g7. But if you don't do that, if you play king to e7, you have queen h7 check, and now if bishop to g7, you just capture and checkmate, and if you bring the king back, then you have queen to f7 checkmate. So yeah, but let me just bring you to the final position, queen to d6, and yeah, in this position Larsen resigned the game, and Fischer has officially slayed the dragon. So as you can see, the Sicilian dragon was here the whole time, but he was proved unworthy of the Fischer attack. And yeah, this beautiful game arose from this opening and from this tournament. Wanted to incorporate the game, a beautiful game with this beautiful story about Fischer. Okay, maybe not a beautiful story, but a very good story, and maybe an interesting story. And yeah, I guess this is pretty much it for this video. So as I said, I will cover more games from the Interzonal tournament in Portoroz. So if you're interested in that, definitely stay tuned. And yeah, that being said, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.